Okay, so if you would like to open up your Bibles to Galatians 5, that's where we're going to be spending the bulk of our time. And you're going to want to, if you have a marker, you're going to want to stick the marker there in Galatians 5. We'll turn around to different passages, but that's going to be our hub for now. But for those of you who are visiting with us, thank you for coming. Let me give you a quick overview. We're doing a quarter on Sundays and Wednesdays of the church as a family. And it's not family in the sense of what we call family today or what we think of family today. If you say, God is our Father, you don't say, what is a father by today's standards? That's not any kind of an example for anyone. We say, what did it mean to be a father when God said, in the time, in the culture, in the situation where God said, I am your father, you're my children. What did it mean to be children? Because we're children of God, we're brothers and sisters with one another. What were sibling relationships like? What did it mean to be family? And so we're looking through that. We spent a lot of time saying, look, family is a major deal throughout the scripture. You can't talk about our relationship with God or our relationship with each other without using the family metaphor. I've already done it. Father, Heavenly Father, we're His children. We're brothers and sisters. That's family language. We spent some time talking about what is family, and so we looked at unity and some of the things that operate against unity, enemies of unity. We talked about loyalty. Families share their stuff. I mean, that's something that makes sense. You stock the pantry, and then the families share the stuff in the pantry, and so families share. We talked about loyalty, faithfulness, steadfast love that exists within a family, stick-to-itness. Are there any comments up to this point before we start a new section tonight? Nothing about any of those things? Tonight we're going to talk about cooperation. And I imagine there are at least 2 classes of this. We'll do cooperation introduction tonight. On Sunday, we're going to start doing some examples of cooperation. And I intentionally put this one off until we're solidly rolling in this material together because it's getting more difficult. Did you find, in the last class when we talked about loyalty, steadfast love, and stick-to-itness, it's getting more difficult, closer to home to talk about these things. And so I put this class off until we're solidly comfortable in this conversation because this is going to be some stuff that probably will make us feel uncomfortable. You can take it or leave it. Hopefully we take it. But here's what cooperation looks like. First, kin, family, especially siblings, should show solidarity and cooperate toward the attainment of goals and goods that promote the advancement of each sibling individually and the family as a whole. Though a person competes mightily for those goods against people outside the extended household, there is no room for competition or division within the family. For such behavior would erode the family's strength, unity, and viability. Families work together. That's what it is. It's families work together. We cooperate towards the same goal. Here's another one. Rivalry, competition, and working against a brother or sister's advantage would be as unnatural and as dysfunctional as for one hand to break what the other hand builds, or for one foot to trip up the other. I'm sure that we've all seen that in some family, but it's not functional. We don't want that as family. And I'll show you this before we get started. I love this. This was from 2018. And I think everybody probably knows how much we love the Olympics. I'm not a huge sports fan, but I love the Olympics. And especially the Midnight Olympics, where nobody cares about curling, It's the midnight stuff. This was one of those things. It's called Team Pursuit. I think it's just Team Pursuit Racing. And it was like there's 3 skaters on a team. And it's like human demolition derby on ice. Probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life, where you have these 6 people together start racing in this circle, and there's always a weakest link. If there's 3 people, there's one that's not as strong as the other, and so the 2 stronger ones push the slower one. They'll go up, they'll skate up behind the slower one, they'll give that person a shove, and they run into each other and they crash into the wall, and it's awesome. And so this team that you see up here is the South Korean team, and you remember the Olympics were in South Korea in 2018. So they take this sport really seriously, and it was at home. And so these 2 here should have been on the team, and this person was a political choice that was made for them. And the 2 who should have been on the team were not happy that this slower person was on the team. They didn't want any part of it. And so they did something that should never be done, especially, you even imagine you can even imagine in sporting events generally, but then in an Eastern country where people take this sort of thing more seriously than Westerners do generally. These 2 in the front collaborated together and said, on a world stage, we're just going to leave her in the dust. Instead of working as a team and pushing their teammate and blocking her up, they made a point. And that you lose. The clock doesn't stop until the last person on your team gets across the finish line, but they made their point. We didn't want her on our team, and she shouldn't be on our team, and so we made a point. And this is what caught my attention. This is the next morning. And look, these are major headlines, major news. This is not like midnight Olympics headlines. South Koreans are furious after speed skaters hang their teammate out to dry. You can see there. Here's one from the Washington Post. Look at this. Koreans were so angered by the display that a petition was started asking that Kim and Park be banned from the national team. They said, we don't even want them to ever be able to skate for our country again because they pulled this stunt. And this is their reasoning. It is a clear national disgrace that such people with a personality problem are representing a country in the Olympics. And the amazing thing to me is by the end of that week, they had well over 1 million signatures on a petition to say, you are not good teammates. You're out of here. And to me, that's a picture of the family. We're supposed to work together and cooperate together, not leave people in the dust. We're not done. We're not done until all of us get across the finish line. That's the goal, to get everybody across the finish line. And so I want to spend our time tonight looking at the works of the flesh, these 8 especially, that are the opposite of the cooperation that's supposed to characterize us. But I'll stop and take a breath here real quick. Does anybody have any comments? Now that you kind of have the ball rolling and you know what we're talking about tonight, families cooperating together, working together, not shoving someone out, not being gross about you're not on our team or anything like that. Any comments? I hope that you have comments later because I'll show you what I did here. With each one of these works of the flesh, so you have 7 moral works of the flesh, and they're things like sexual immorality and sensuality and impurity and idolatry, those things that are listed. It's interesting to me in the works of the flesh that more than half of them have to do with this, like this category of not working together, not getting along. Not cooperating. Our class is cooperation. Not cooperating with each other as we should. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the data. These are the definitions of the words and some other examples of where we're going to find the words. And then you get to write the rest of the class and give illustrations or examples of each of these. Or the opposite. So the first is enmity. Oh, and I should probably tell you this. This is the works of the flesh as listed in the ESV. I realize that many of your different translations will have different words and different translations for these words, but we're going to try and keep it as simple as we can tonight. Just go with one list. Enmity. The easiest way for me to remember the meaning of enmity is that it sounds like enemy. And this is not my definition. This is straight out of a lexicon. Enmity is being an enemy of. Look at this example that I have up here. This is the same word, only it's translated hostility. In Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 14. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 14. He himself is our peace, who has made us both one and has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility. To be enemies with each other. We're enemies. That's the opposite of cooperating. Can you think of an example or an illustration of that? Some way to bring it to life? Put some color on this word? I know you didn't have any time to think about it, so I'm going to give you some.
I'm just going back to the original reference between Satan and Eve's seed. There's enmity between them.
Yeah. Yeah, so like the whole plot of the Bible, in Genesis 3:15, there's going to be enmity between the serpent and his offspring and the woman and her offspring. And so like all of this great strife that exists in the world around us right now, this enmity in the world around us right now, is a good picture of what should not exist within the family of God's people. That's what the flesh does. That's not what the family does.
There's a saying, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. And I think that sort of stems from this idea that sometimes those people that are closest to you can cause the most friction. If you're around someone 4 times a week or with your family constantly every day, it's those people that can just constantly get under your skin and sort of start to create that division. So I think sometimes it's the fact that we are trying to be so close, that we want to be around each other a lot, that might be the source of this potential, enmity that can form.
Yeah. I don't want to use that word though, because now what I've tried to do after this preparation is to program enmity with enemy in my mind. Family's messy, and we argue, and it happens. But that doesn't mean you're my enemy. Like, that's another level. Enemy is solidly the picture of we're not on the same team working together. Remember the unity conversation? We're all going to hop on the bus, and the bus is going to the same place. The enemy is I'm going to pop the tires on the bus, and nobody's going anywhere.
Let's think Saul's relationship with David. They became enemies, or Saul became an enemy with David while David fled and avoided an enemy relationship per se. But Saul's was straight enemy from the time he didn't like David to the point he realized he was in sin.
Yeah. It's a stronger thing than you're getting on my nerves right now. I mean, with Saul's situation is I'm going to try to kill you. We don't have to get that part to be that wrong, but Ryan?
I think about Nehemiah and the building of the wall. I don't remember the name of this particular adversary, but he was so against the project, and at first he just kind of seems, anti-progress, but then he does some dark things like plotting and wanting to draw him out into the field, and things that are, I'm not on the same page as you, and I'm going to actively work against what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Eric?
Okay, going to Philippians, 1, like 17 and 18. Just to start paraphrasing. He's talking about people that proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment, so
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think Paul is neat because he was like, good, you're proclaiming Christ. But I don't want to stand before God on Judgment Day having done so with that motive. So I'm going to push forward just a little because we got to cover all of these words. But here's the thing about this. So this is a family conversation. And I know that some of you will not be at this spot where I am, I hope. But if I'm going through this word and thinking about this concept that cannot exist within the family, there's names that pop into my head. And I don't want this study to be like some sort of academic level, that's bad. I want this study to be, I can't do that. A family's supposed to cooperate together and work together towards the same means, and this is towards the same end, and this is the enemy of that. This is not going to ever work if we're going to be the family that God called us to be. Strife is the next word in the list. I don't think that I actually gave you, I apologize for this. And it's in Galatians 5, in case you need to know this, to see it in your Bible. Galatians 5, starting in verse 19. And the words that we're looking at right now are in verse 20. We started with, so there's idolatry, sorcery, and we started with these words, enmity, strife. Strife is engagement in rivalry. That's probably the word that I'm going to latch on to with strife. Normally when I think of strife, I just think of this. Normally when I think of strife, I think of bickering. You know what I mean? Like, the bickering. But diving into the definitions just a little bit, on both of these definitions, engagement in rivalry, especially with reference to positions taken in a matter, strife seems to be more pointed not so much to bickering and just not getting along, but I'm on this team, you're on that team, and we're against each other. That's not bickering. That's the opposite of family cooperation. We're not actively working together on the same team for the same thing, which is the family cooperation we're talking about here.
I think about the faction of the circumcision and how they intentionally tried to draw lines between those who were obeying the law of Moses in Christ and trying to force others, but they made a clear distinction that, the Gentiles who were not doing that, there is an engagement in rivalry. It's not just that we're going at one another, we think you're wrong.
Yeah.
And we're going to draw clear distinctions.
Yeah. So the clear distinctions too, and the example that I have up there for you in Corinthian is not, that word quarreling is our same word strife, but there is it verses 12 and 13? I think verses 12 and 13 where you can see that Paul says, I've heard from Chloe's people that there's quarreling among you, that there's strife among you. But the great thing about the Corinthians passage is, then he paints a picture of what it is. And he says, some of you say, I am of Paul and Cephas and Apollos and Christ. That's the team I want to be on, the one who says, I'm of Christ. But there are people in Corinth who are like, this is my faction, this is my faction, this is my faction. That's the rivalry aspect of this. I know it's like uncomfortable because I don't want you to, I want to talk about this, but I don't want the example to be, well, one time Eric, we can't do that. But I do want to talk about this. You ever see anything like this in the family of God's people? A sense of rivalry and operating on two different teams? Jessica, thanks, Dave.
I think that I get a lot of insight into the church with my kids. I see them as, oh wow, we do that as kids. It's those times when they just get after each other. It's like nothing. There's two kids, and there's nothing that's going to make them happy, and they're not going to. One is
Yeah.
Sure. And sometimes we need a snack or a nap, and just, walk away and come back. And,
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, we can work this out.
Yeah. You all would, I realize that a lot of the things that I do are ridiculous sometimes. I know that that's true. But when my kids were small, remember we would go back here, there was this time, some of our kids did this stuff together. There was this time right back here behind the shed, they would go back and there was they had built a structure back there. The city stopped by one time and asked if we had a permit for it. Not that part, that's not true. But they had built a structure in the back, and at some point they said, where they were talking about their club, and there's a kid who's not in the club. And I told my kids, you are not allowed to go in that backyard where people are talking about club this and club that. And then people would say, well, Ryan, you're being silly. It's silly until you see an actual church family that acts like there's clubs within the church. And then all of a sudden it's not silly anymore. And so I want to stay as far away from that in every way as I can, as I possibly can, to express differences of opinion. There you go, Jessica. It's not like we all have to, have the same opinion of everything, but sometimes this turns into, oh, you think that, then I think this. That's strife. You have a sense of that one? I think we did that one well enough. Other?
I think women maybe were worse about this, but I'll start with a more general one. I think we do teams with politics, and then I think that I've seen us as women do this, like stay-at-home moms grouping together, or working moms grouping together, or homeschool moms working together, or grouping up together, and public school moms grouping up together. I think the important thing is always we're gonna do things differently, but we're only all on Team Jesus. No matter how any of those other things play out in our life, there should never be a division that causes us to not be on Team Jesus.
Yeah. Any sense of rivalry within that. Okay, next one is jealousy. Look at, I'm going to ask for a reader on this one. James 3, would you go there, please? Jealousy, intense negative feelings over another's achievements or success. So this is what I like to do, is to take that definition and to imagine it interpersonally, some relationship that exists within the family. And especially this, I'll tell you where I got this quote from. Jealousy, viewing others as competition versus family or friends. I saw that on Twitter. Elon Musk posted it and he said, this is what my mom always told me. And I thought, well, that's a good definition of it. You are not, especially since it fits this conversation, jealousy is, you're not my family working toward the same end with me. You're my competition. And my job is to beat you and to get ahead of you. That's a sense of jealousy. You see it, I think, in James. Somebody, would you read that, please? James 3, 14 to 16.
But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice.
Read that last verse again. Just that last sentence. Everybody do this. Breathe that last thing in. Listen carefully to what James says.
For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice.
Have you ever seen jealousy within a church family? What does it look like?
Situation you don't want to be in.
Yeah, Benny?
It's gross because it just carries over and so many asks us, even just sitting amongst each
Yeah. I think, here's what I want to do. I want to have a breather. I don't think that we're quite halfway through this list yet, but go up to Galatians 5 and verse 13. It seems as if this list was specifically crafted for this conversation. Paul is saying to the Galatians, you guys cannot be on different teams. You can't, one of you be over here and one of you be over here. And so he addressed it in chapter 5 and verse 13. You are called to freedom, brothers, only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh. We're talking about the works of the flesh right now. Don't use your freedom as an opportunity for these things, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. In verse 15, here's the reason. If you bite and devour one another, watch out that you're not consumed by one another. If I'm going to be jealous and actively, take steps to live and talk or not talk because of that jealousy, and we're going to bite each other, the picture is if we're going to bite each other so much, we're just going to eat each other up, and then there's not going to be anything left. That's not okay. Do you have something or no?
Yeah, same people for a different category, but David and Saul, I was thinking of from 1 Samuel 18, verse 6, starting at 6, happened they were coming when David returned from killing the Philistine, and the women came out to all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with joy, with musical instruments. The women sang as they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands, David his 10,000s. Then Saul became very angry for saying this displeased him. He said, they have ascribed to David 10,000s, but to me have ascribed thousands. Now how can he have? Now what more can he have but the kingdom? So what was interesting about that to me, and I never thought of it this way, is they were actually complimenting Saul. Like I don't know that there was a deliberate insult there. I mean, it could have just been the fact of the matter.
Yeah.
Like they were stating something that truly happened. He took it as some insult. And then what I noticed with jealousy, and if you want to talk about the church, what I've experienced is, and I think when you're talking about the biting, there's going to be a tear down of other people. So when there's somebody doing something great or doing something that somebody perceives as great, there's going to be attempts, specific intents to tear down, to destroy, to assassinate the character of, to do many things that are going to do whatever they can to pull that other person down to their level, below their level, whatever that is to ruin this person.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I wrote that one in there. That's the grossness of jealousy. It doesn't just, that's what Jake read for us. And I think what we can do with Dave's example too, in James 3:15, that bitter jealousy leads to every vile practice. Saul started with the jealousy. Oh, the people think that David's better than me. And then it grew into the rivalry of, I'm going to try and kill you. And so you can kind of see the progression there. And that's the tear down. Did I see one, Morgan?
Yeah, I think jealousy can also affect you personally with the Lord and your blessings. It almost nullifies how God has blessed you specifically. And then that jealousy can ruin other people's blessings, and those are supposed to be used in the kingdom for the Lord. So it just seems like a huge missed opportunity to praise God for how He's taking care of you and providing for you, and you can really ruin fruit. You can really ruin your fruit, or, I mean, really just, I don't know what the word is, but make other people's work in vain. It just seems like it can get in the way of so many relationships, not just you and that person.
Yeah. I like that. I like that if I'm spending my time being jealous of another person, I'm taking time away from what I should be offering thanks to God for what I have.
Right, or using what you've been given already for His glory. It just is super immature and like super missed opportunity.
Yeah, good.
Huge missed opportunities.
I like that. Luke?
So I looked in verse 24. Now those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified
Yeah.
We're not giving that energy, directly to our master. We're directing it to myself,
Yeah. And here,
my goods, or my people.
he-
Not to Christ.
right, and here we are again, the same thing. If we're going to talk about church as family, the motto is we, not me. And you're pointing us, oh, that's he, we because of he, not me. That's nice. But yeah, Jessica.
I think it's important that if you're a third party, or if someone's seeking counsel, that you're not stoking the fire or putting fuel to it, that you're trying to contain and smother rather than letting it spread.
Yeah. Be the peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers, not keepers or enjoyers, the makers, which is a task. Fits of anger, intense expression of the inner self. On who yelled at me? Morgan? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to mention that we were talking about there in like verse 14, you shall love your neighbor as thyself. And we're talking about these works of the flesh and how it has all these words, and it's complete, and it's mirrored in 1 Corinthians when it talks about what love is. And it talks about almost all of these things. This is not what love is. And then here it's like these are works of the flesh, that this isn't loving.
Yeah. And here we are back to self. I mean, it seems like there needs to be a whole central root of family is outward, not inward. Good. On the fits of anger thing, most of the time, about half of the time in the ESV, the word is wrath. I'll tell you the one that I thought of with this. I have said it and done it and watched other people do it, and I think it fits well into this category and should not happen anymore. Have you ever done this thing where you say, I just got to get it out? And the response after this is, no, you don't. No, and you shouldn't. Bottle it up. Don't get it out. Don't have the fits of anger, these intense expression of inner self, the passionate desire of an overwhelming and possibly destructive. I just got to get it out. And you can see in a family relationship how that is destructive. Like if I'm frustrated and I just got to get it out. No. What I need to do is control it so it's not wrath in the first place. There's probably some other things that you can do to fill that one out. The Luke 4 example is Jesus saying that I am the Jubilee. He doesn't say it in those words. He says, I am the fulfillment of this passage. And he closes up the scroll. And the Jewish leaders who were there just get so mad. They lose control of themselves and they take Jesus out to a cliff to throw him off the hill. If you are getting there, like if this stage of anger happens in your life, that's not okay. And so that's not academic. Please, don't just read this list and say, check fits of anger. Say, okay, that's something that can't happen anymore. It's not gonna facilitate the family cooperation that we're doing here. Others on that one? A couple of these start to run together. Maybe not rivalries. I don't like strife. What did I say was the thing for strife? I think that strife should be rivalry. In the Boyer Standard Version of the Bible, that's the way that it would be, because rivalry fits that word better. I'm pretty sure that some of your versions treat rivalries more than half the time in the ESV. It's called selfish ambition. And that really is the key for this word and the thing that we've already hit on several times. This is about me. This is about self-seeking, what I want, what I think, what I like. It's about me. And I think rivalry probably should not be that. It should probably be selfish ambition. We saw that in James 3, your thing about jealousy. Selfish ambition was its next door neighbor that leads to every vile practice. Anything on that? Selfishness? Self-seekingness? Yes, Ryan?
Think entire list of kings that we have and how they were going after their literal family for selfish purposes, pushing them to the side, putting them to the edge of the sword, all for self-promotion.
Yeah.
And we would expect that with the nations, when really they were treating the nations like family and killing their own.
Yeah. So I have on my notes, I have a star next to strife, because remember, that's the rivalry. Taking up teams and also dissensions and divisions. Let's do those together, because I think that's the same thing. Being factious opposition. Division into opposing groups. That's a great definition. Like, I can know that one. Division into opposing groups. Divisions, a group that holds tenets distinctive to it. So I follow Paul, I follow Cephas, I follow Apollos, I follow Christ. This is my doctrine. Sometimes you'll see the word doctrine attached to this word. In Acts chapter 15 and verse 5, it says, this is a quote, there should be quote marks on that. The problem in Jerusalem is some believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees. Believers in the Christian family who have their own party of beliefs and practices that are separating them from everybody else in the church. Not okay. And then the last one on the list is envy, a state of ill will towards someone because of some real or presumed advantage experienced by such a person. When the Jewish leaders brought Jesus to Pilate, the text tells us in Matthew and Mark that Pilate knew good and well he wasn't guilty, but that they were bringing him because they were envious of him. He's taking away from us. Again, I didn't make the connection with selfishness, but I think we did in class tonight. So the bell's going to ring in 1 minute. I'll give you the last word, and you can say whatever you want, but I want to just kind of wrap up what we're doing here. What is family? Family cooperates together. And so we've spent an entire class saying, that's not any of this. And I wanted to tell you something. We were talking about this class Monday night. And Lily said, I have a question. What are we doing? We were talking about, remember the thing I told you in class last time about some past experiences that left me with some PTSD or something? It feels like it sometimes. Lily said, what are we doing to make sure that that doesn't happen again? And I said, this is what we're doing. We're talking about it now. And the goal is, if any of us so much as smells this in the family, you don't let it fester and grow into some monster that can't be controlled. This is stuff that has to be rooted out early and quick. It can't be a part of the family that's going to operate like a family.
I think like at the core of that is being unafraid to correct one another and to stop one another, because it's all driven by words. And if we can just stop our friends dead in their tracks when they want to say something that falls under any of these categories, we can nip it in the bud and hopefully turn that train around so that it
Yeah.
doesn't fester.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be an ugly thing.
No.
It doesn't have to be, you're sinning right now. It's, hey, whoa, let's not do that. Let's not do that. That goes ugly places. And so we're not even going to walk down that road.
But in that situation, we need to be close enough to have the person receive our correction as love.
Yeah.
As opposed to coming down on it.
Right.
So we have to have that family unity
Yeah.
in place.
It's a holistic, the whole thing is a, okay, so here's what I'd like for you to think about for Sunday. Sorry to do the negative approach. Families cooperate. We don't do this. So what do we do? How does church family cooperate together? And my guess is, I am like 99% certain that we're not going to get through my list on Sunday. This is probably going to take, and we have time, it's fine. But I got a lot of examples, and put your big boy pants on for Sunday. because it might sound fun to say, oh yeah, families cooperate, but we're Americans and we like people to stay out of our business. But cooperating together means we get into each other's business to get to the end goal here. So we're going to do some of that stuff on Sunday. Thank you very much for your participation tonight. I appreciate it.